Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
What's up, everybody? Sorry, I was about to call this something that it wasn't. This is the Georgia show. I've never hosted this thing before, so Wes is. I got some big shoes to fill tonight. Wes is
welcome
actually
to the
at
club,
Disneyland.
Jake.
Yeah,
welcome to the club. I mean, you're the only one of us that hasn't hosted the podcast before.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess all the way in now. We've done this finally. Wes is literally at Disney. Georgia wins a title, Wes goes to Disney, and that's how it goes. But he's having a great time, and he deserves it. Dude works hard. But listen, we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the celebration and kind of how that went. We're going to talk about the departures, the guys that Georgia has lost via the transfer portal, via the NFL draft, or guys that just ran out of eligibility finally. Stetson Bennett, believe it or not, has. But before we get into any of that, and also we're going to preview the rankings. The special edition of Dawg Stocks tonight, we're going to preview those rankings. But before we get to any of that, obviously I have to mention the events of the last 48 hours. And it's been tough, man. It's been tough looking at pictures and seeing what's going on with people their tributes to Devin, Willick, and Chandler Lacroix, and obviously our hearts and thoughts and prayers and everything I could possibly give go out to that family. But it's kind of tough seeing them up there on the thing. But Roos, you had a beautiful this morning. Thought kind of shared your experience there with Devin Willick, and for those who don't get to see it, it is with us over at DawgsHQ. It's a members thing that Roosh kind of shared from a personal experience, and if you just want to kind of give somebody that's not a subscriber or hadn't had a chance to read it a little bit of a snippet about what it's about.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can make that one free maybe at some point this week.
For sure.
I just kind of went back and, I wrote a lot about obviously all of these guys over the course of the last few years. And so, I've covered these guys since they were in high school, and Devin Willick was no exception. And, what really stood out to me is in thinking about him, I understand a lot of why these guys choose Georgia. A lot of guys choose Georgia because that's where they're from, or a lot of guys choose Georgia because, they think that they can make it to the NFL from Georgia. Devin Willick was from New Jersey, and Georgia doesn't get a lot of kids out of New Jersey. And so I never really understood fully what it was that Devin Willick loved so much about Georgia. But, Rusty Mansell mentioned that somebody told him a story that Devin Willick rode a Greyhound bus to Georgia to work out for the coaches. He was so excited by the offer. He has family in Gainesville, Georgia. And, he said there were connections that he had to the state as well. And, it was one of those things that he was a guy who was offered, and it seemed like it kind of all came and went, and they had other guys, and he moved on as well and committed to Penn State. And then when Sam Pittman left and took the job at Arkansas, there was an opening because Josh Braun decided to flip to the University of Florida, and Matt Luke called Devin Willick. And I mean, within a matter of days, Devin Willick took his official visit, signed with Georgia, decommitted from Penn State. I mean, it all happened very, very quickly. And, I thought that was just very telling of the young man and his love for this school. I didn't get to know him on a personal level in terms of, what he was about or what he was like. And there's a lot of tribute pieces out there that I encourage people to go read. I'm not saying, we've got the end all be all. Jeff Santel, I think, did a beautiful piece over at Dog Nation. There were a lot of great pieces out there that people have done about him. But what really struck me about about Devin Willick was the just the want to be in Athens. It seemed prevalent from the time he got the offer, and seemed like a guy who was just really thankful to have the opportunity. And you hear guys say, "I'm blessed to be here," and he was a guy who really felt like that was the case for. So, terrible tragedy. Reminded me of I had something in my own life about 10 years ago, not dissimilar from it, and from the reports that we're hearing about, Cedric Van Pran and Jalen Carter and their proximity to all of this when it occurred. It reminded me a lot of that, and it drew a lot of parallels into my personal life, and that made it even tougher to think about. But overall, there's no making sense of things like this. All you can do is really extend condolences and send peace to people, and pray that happens for them at whatever point in their life, because I'm sure it's not going to be today, it's not going to be tomorrow. These things take time, and they don't necessarily heal. I once heard somebody say that grief is like it's like a ball, and it never shrinks, but your life grows, and so the room around the ball gets bigger. And maybe that's the way that you have to look at it. I don't know. For me, it changed me a lot, and I'm sure it will these people too. But just a devastating situation all around. And all I can do is add my thoughts and prayers, and I've been doing so pretty fervently here over the last 48 hours, as I know you guys have as well.
Palmer, any personal experiences here? Any observations of Devin Willick, over the last couple years?
Yeah. We, like Jake said, he was somebody that came onto the scene late for Georgia, and typically those guys don't end up being, or very often those guys don't end up being major contributors. They're more of a filler piece in the class. And that's kind of what I thought of, when it came to Willick. But so that's why when we ended up getting to talk to him this past spring, it was very surprising. Somebody asked him, I went back and rewatched the interview yesterday. And somebody asked him, hey, we read into this way too much. What does this mean that Kirby is sending you up here? And, obviously we saw how the 2022 season played out. He played in all 15 games, started 2 of them, was a key contributor on the Georgia offensive line. And that's part of the reason why Kirby sent him up to talk to us. But I also think that Kirby probably sent him up to talk to us because of the person that he was, the figure that he was in the locker room. You can tell based on the offensive line and those guys being so close, how much he cared, how much he didn't want the spotlight to be on him. He wanted it to be on the team. He, told us this spring that he was very willing to play wherever, and whatever his role was, that's what he was happy to do. And like you said, Roos, he wanted to be at Georgia for one reason or another, and that was clear based on, and he wanted Georgia to succeed, and that was clear based on the comments that he shared with us. Funny story, we had a conversation this spring amongst the media members talking about different pizza in Athens, and we even asked Kirby, and Devin comes up, and we talked to Devin about food. He's an offensive lineman, and so we asked him, being a New Jersey native, what it was that he missed the most about New Jersey and living up north, and he said it was the pizza. He said it was the food, the pizza, the bagels. Spoken like a true offensive lineman right there. So very glad that we got to have that experience of speaking with Devin. And also, going back and looking through photos from the championship celebration, I said it to Cedric Van Pran as the offensive line bus was pulling up. Nobody has more fun than offensive linemen.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly fair to say. And I think that's also what makes this so hard, is just the idea of, going from the high that Georgia was experiencing earlier in the day to something like this. That's, I think, what makes that all the more difficult. There's no easy way for this to happen. That's not fair for me to paint it that way, and I hope I'm not. But I think to go from the mountaintop that you were on to to dealing with this is a pretty far fall and a pretty big shock to the emotional system.
Yeah, and I think that's what it looked like from, a 30,000 foot view for a lot of people as they saw it and they were like, man, this team was, riding high yesterday and now kind of dealing with some devastating losses. And, obviously heart goes out to, the recovering victim that was in that car accident and Warren McClendon as well, that he's able to find some peace in all this. He is apparently fine, some cuts and nicks and bruises for him. And, I know we talked a lot about Devin Willick, but Chandler Lacroix, I've talked to several people kind of in the community here recently or here in the last 24 hours that are like, yeah, she was this, or yeah, she was that, or yeah, she was involved in this. And, obviously somebody who meant a lot to the community and a lot to that program. You see a lot of those recruits bringing her up. I just talked to her yesterday. A lot of the girls that work with her, the ladies that work with her were really, had the greatest things to say. So, I definitely wanted us to have a chance to talk about that because that's that's what's here right now. And I think all of us understand that everything we're about to talk about doesn't matter compared to that. But hopefully it'll get your mind off of it for a little while because I think you saw just a few minutes ago how it's kind of impacted me when I think about it or see it too much. Just breaks my heart. A lot of life lost there. But let's kind of transition here. And Roosh kind of did it a minute ago talking about that mountaintop thing, the celebration. I was there. Palmer was there. Palmer apparently was breaking all sorts of laws I hear, just walking down the middle of the street. I actually was able to go with my family. It was a really cool experience. Kirby was fired up. Stetson Bennett was not. We can get into that if you want to. I don't really care to. Stetson doesn't owe me nothing. But I will say incredible atmosphere for that parade. It wasn't, I looked back and it wasn't the same celebration Saturday inside the stadium that it was last year. But that parade, I can't imagine last year's parade being that much more live.
I'm just seeing this celebration footage for the first time. That man, come on now. They give Kirby Smart a BMW M3 and they're making Chadera Uso Deribe set on hay bales. That ain't right, man.
Made Todd Monken. Todd
Monken
Did you guys see my line in my column about the celebration about Todd Monken?
Yeah.
I said he looked like he was waiting on the latest leg of the Iditarod. That's what he looked like, dude. Just bundled up little Eskimo dude right there.
And he calls himself a Midwest man.
Yeah. Warren Brinson with the pageant wave the whole way. I mean, that kid's gonna have wrist tendonitis.
Dedicated to it, man. You gotta love that.
Tell us about your harrowing experience on Lumpkin Street.
Yeah.
I mean, so I will say I was not there for the parade or the celebration last year, so it's hard for me to compare the two. But I can't imagine it being more exciting than it was this year. And I think that it was fun. I mean, like you said, I was breaking all the laws and walking down the middle of the street. So I'll share a little bit of a story here. The parade route started up by the football facility at Buttsmere and went down Lumpkin to, for those that are familiar with the campus, the Bolton Dining Hall, MLC area, that crosswalk in the middle, that's where they would let the guys out, and they walked between the MLC and the student center all the way to the stadium. And so I started my day at the stadium, dropped my camera equipment off and stuff, carried some of it with me to shoot this and some photos as well. But when I was down there, they told me I could not stay within the barricades. And that was my understanding, is that I wasn't going to be allowed to be within the barricades for the dog walk and stuff. But I had been told elsewhere that we were allowed to be essentially inside the ropes for the parade. Walk up the street, there are no ropes. There were no rules. As you can see in this video, there's kids running off the street up to the cars to get autographs from the players. And so that was a really cool experience to be a part of. I think me being in the middle of it, shooting photos and video was probably the least of their concerns. That they just wanted to make sure that the little boys and girls weren't getting run over by the trucks that were carrying the players.
Bedlam.
But yeah, it was certainly fun to be a part of, to see to see this community come together like that. It was really something special.
Bottles were popped. I saw some champagne getting thrown around. I don't think that man throwing that champagne around was of age. I hope that was sparkling grape juice.
I saw a video of Warren Erickson just crushing a beer. I mean,
he's definitely old enough.
Like Ben Jones and the Patriots. Some of the Patriots.
Yeah, him and Warren McClendon enjoyed a nice a Miller Lite, but I'm not gonna name the player that the wide receiver. We'll go that far. The wide receiver that was popping bottles of champagne.
Well, I'll say this: Warren Erickson is definitely old enough to drink. He was old enough to drink when he played in that Super Troopers movie years ago and jumped over the counter and tackled that guy. I can't remember his name. Very funny guy in that movie, but Farva, I believe, was who it was. It's who he looks like when he's got his little facial hair going on. Out there doing his pass sets before the game, we became known as Farva. Now he's headed to the NFL.
It's for a cop.
Why'd you say that? Oh, what a movie. What a movie. Heck, that's a good transition into what we need to talk about next is departures, right? Warren McClendon is also on the way out. Warren Erickson is out. I'm really glad to be done with that nightmare because boy, oh boy, have I written the wrong names in offensive line breakdowns. I've had Warren Erickson starting at tackle many times in preseason watch lists and stuff. So just to get those Warrens off the team is nice. But no, those are two great Bulldogs, and they played real hard for Georgia. Listen, we got a lot of departures, and this is not even it as far as the transfer portal. Megan, our producer, did a fantastic job with this, but since we have, come on the air, not since we come on the air, but since we got all this planned out, Dominic Blaylock has entered the portal as well, giving Georgia an even 9. And that's not even. This is even what we're looking at right now. Bill Norton was the first. Obviously, he came. That was in December, right? And Bill Norton has a landing spot. That's Arizona. Eric Gilbert. Time will tell on that. Brett Seither is headed to Georgia Tech. According to reports, I don't think James Singletary, Jacob Hood, or Tresman Marshall have chosen anybody. And MJ Sherman is off to Nebraska. Guys, when you look at the Dawg departures, transfer portal, what's the biggest one? What's the one that surprised you? What's the one that, you're like, all right, this guy could have helped Georgia most the next year? What's the one that just stands out to you for whatever reason?
I don't know that I would say I was predicting him to help Georgia next year, but Jaheim Singletary seemed a bit interesting to me personally. I mean, I thought that there probably would be some attrition from the young guys when it came to the defensive backfield, but Singletary was such a highly rated player and a guy that had seen Georgia's system work kind of so proof positive that I thought he might stick around. And so his was just a little bit surprising to me. I get it. And I think that that's pretty telling, actually, of what he sees as the future of that room. So that should be encouraging, even though it sucks to lose a 5-star player anytime. But I think Singletary's departure, to me, stood out probably the most of any of them, just because I thought it was an interesting choice at this point.
Yeah, I obviously pick it based on why it stands out to you. I was just bringing up some reasons that it might stand out to you. But yeah, I would it'd probably be hard to disagree with that one all the way around. And it didn't even feel like a surprise as much as you're just kind of like, this never really had a chance to blossom. This never really had a chance to get going. He was, if I'm not mistaken, Jake, he was a summer enrollee.
Yeah, that's as best I remember.
Right. Yeah. So summer enrollee. He was. Yeah, I mean, he was several months behind, Dalen Everett, who actually, kind of made a little bit of a splash there and was Georgia's number 3 corner for a while Nyland Green was battling. May have been the number 3 corner after Nyland Green came back. Palmer, any of those transfers stand out to you? Obviously, Dominic Blaylock can be a part of that group as well.
Yeah, I'll go with Tresman Marshall because of the contributor that he was, and also because I think you were going to take him, Jake.
Nah, I actually wasn't, but that's a good pick.
The contributor that he was to this Georgia defense, I understand really with all these guys. I do understand why they are leaving. They're not first on the depth chart. They're behind several guys, and in most cases, you could probably make the case that they were never going to be first on the depth chart. But Tresman was a major contributor. Obviously, an upperclassman looking for more playing time, and I can't fault him for that. Do think that a team is going to get a really good player in Tresman Marshall, somebody that's been a contributor when healthy. When he's been healthy, he's been a major contributor. Maybe not the first, second, third linebacker. I mean, this year he was the third linebacker, but Georgia really only played two. But somebody that has been able to provide depth, throughout his entire career when healthy. And if I'm not mistaken, he might have been the highest rated guy in that class. No, he came in with Nakobe Dean, but he was pretty highly rated, if I'm not mistaken.
Who, Tresman Marshall?
Tresman was a 4-star guy for sure.
Yeah.
And again, to me, and probably even more so than Singletary, at least in my view, I think he was probably projecting into the future about look what Georgia brought in this year, in terms of the signing class for 2023 at the inside linebacker position. Plus, you've got what's already in place. I mean, I get it, man. And Jake, I think you said on the board, there's probably 10 schools in the SEC this guy can go start for.
Coming in as high as the number 2 linebacker in the country per ESPN.
We know for a fact there's not a school he can't go into and be the number 3 linebacker for.
Oh, sure.
He was number 3 for Georgia, and Georgia's got the best 2 inside linebackers probably in the league, right up there with anybody. I look at it like this from Tresman Marshall's standpoint. If you're going to go somewhere, you're looking at a guy that probably wants to be a 6-year senior at some point. Go somewhere and spend 2 years there. Don't just spend 1. I mean, 1, you can get some stuff out of it. You do the Joe Burrow thing. Even if you're not playing that position, you can go do some stuff and help yourself out. And, I think Tresman could go play at a place like Miami, or he could go to an Oregon, or, there are a lot of different places I'm sure that are very interested in adding a guy like him to their roster. Just hope he can stay healthy for his sake. He's had a variety of injuries, listen, I don't know that Ryan Davis would be that far behind. It may be after spring, may have a chance to graduate this spring or something like that. But Tresman Marshall's laid it all out there for Georgia. He's not going to ever have a problem coming back to the University of Georgia. That will never be a problem for him. I'm going to go with a guy that's going to help me make this transition that we're about to do to the NFL draft and Dominic Blaylock. Doesn't surprise me. What it does, though, is it assures that somebody is going to play slot receiver for Georgia at some point that is not Dominic Blaylock or Kearis Jackson. And it's been a long, long time since it hasn't been at least one of those guys. Since, neither one of them did it in 2018 because Blaylock wasn't on the roster and Kearis Jackson played more running back than he did slot receiver.
Well, he redshirted that year, too.
Yeah, he redshirted, but he also had 1 carry on a tall sweep for 6 yards. So he basically did nothing.
My first game that I covered.
Yeah, MTSU. That's right. Cade Mays got stomped out there, left tackle a couple times, and I think folks kind of figured that Cade Mays wasn't quite the next Andrew Thomas at that point. But against Middle Tennessee, but it's been a long time, guys, since Dominic Blaylock or Kearis Jackson wasn't playing. Something 2019. So and then Kearis stepped in, had his best year when Dominic didn't play at all. There in 2020. So, you're looking at Kearis Jackson leaving. You're looking at those other guys leaving on that departures list for the NFL draft. And, Georgia's got to retool at the slot receiver position. It's something I'm going to write about and get really in depth with tomorrow at DawgsHQ with an impact analysis on losing those 2 players. But the thing about it is Georgia has guys that are supremely capable. I mean, Lab McConkey, which we're hearing is going to stay. We'll see if he actually does. Haven't really heard an official decision on that. He could have been going to stay, 30 minutes ago and got some new information to decide right now that he's going to leave. I don't know. But right now I would say he's probably going to stay. So you got him perfectly capable of playing in the slot, maybe more of an ideal fit for the slot than anything else. You've got Arian Smith. That's more of, I think, of a specialist gadget guy out of the slot, but probably has more experience actually lining up there than anybody else in Georgia's offense. Dominic Lovett, also very capable of the slot. Jake, I think you would probably agree. Anthony Evans, probably the most, agreeable to the slot out of the receivers Georgia signed in this new class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's a perfect fit. And I mean, he's basically the second coming of Arian Smith, although he's probably much more football focused than Smith was in his high school career.
God, I heard F come out of your mouth there, and I thought you were about to say much faster. Man.
Hey, listen, if you go look at mile split, his 100-meter times, Anthony Evans' 100-meter time in high school per mile split is faster than Arian Smith's.
What is Anthony Evans?
Anthony Evans, I think, is 10.13.
Oh, I thought he was like a 10.6.
Well, and I mean, you've got CJ Smith, somebody that's a burner as well.
Yeah,
maybe not necessarily for the.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. 10.27. 10.27.
Okay. Well, still.
Wow,
yeah,
so slow.
10.27. Arian Smith.
Palmer was running 10.27s down Lumpkin Street uphill.
So 2020 outdoor rankings, Arian Smith 10.47. So a full 2 seconds, full 0.2 seconds faster in high school per the mile split. So
yeah, my man Matthew C's got a good point about Jermaine Johnson. How he just needed 1 year, 100% on that Tresman Marshall thing. He might only need 1 year, but it's give yourself 2. It's never a bad thing. I think he could go do that and decide to jump to the NFL, go be a 100 tackle guy. He just needs to stay healthy.
I think, too, that Tresman Marshall and Jaheim Singletary are 2 guys that it would not surprise me to see Georgia playing against one day.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see both of them at Florida State or both of them at Florida. Or not Florida, but both of them at Florida State, both of them at
Singletary to Florida makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. They were heavily involved first time around, right?
They were, yeah. He was an Ohio State commit the first time. But, yeah, Florida was definitely a big part of his recruitment for sure.
Well, he's from Jacksonville and did take notice on his Instagram story. He had I'm coming home playing in the background. So whether that means to the state of Florida, to be a Jacksonville Dolphin.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Big get for the Dolphins.
Big get. Did Deion Sanders become the head coach of the Jacksonville Dolphins? We'll never know. But no, looking back to this slot thing, really in depth. I've already gotten most of it done. Encourage you guys to come on over, check us out. $30, and that'll get you through August 31st. Through that. By the way, Roos, that story that you said you wanted to make free, I made it free before you were done talking. So if you want to come over and read that Devin Willick story, the Thank You Devin by Jake Roos, come over and read it. It is a free story. Something we wanted our subscribers to be able to see first thing this morning, but definitely don't feel like leaving it long enough to make $1 off of it because that would be BS, and we're not going to do that. So, all right, when you're looking at the departures from the NFL draft part of this, biggest loss in your opinion? I think we can, obviously you can even pick, I guess, amongst the guys that we knew were leaving, even though I think Jalen Carter is just kind of a slam dunk there, but biggest loss amongst the guys I think that maybe there was a question about.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, Jalen Carter obviously is the answer. I mean, there's no question about it. There's nobody.
I would argue with you, Roos, that I think I would take Broderick Jones. I would bring Broderick Jones back before I brought Jalen Carter back.
Jalen Carter is just on a different level, man. I mean, Jalen Carter may be the best defensive player in college football.
He is.
I mean, Broderick Jones is probably not the best offensive tackle in college football.
But I would argue that he can be.
Yeah, I would agree. And on this team, that may be even more important. I'm not saying that that's not the case. To me, Carter's just, he's just a different cat. I don't know. I said Warren Erickson because I think that Carter and Jones were so expected, at least in my mind. Erickson or McClendon. God, see, you made me do it now. McClendon is the guy who I thought could have returned and could have probably boosted his stock even further. And I think that because I expected those other 2 guys to go, and he was kind of a maybe come back, I think he's the most impactful personally. I mean, the other guys I kind of expected it for. I mean, you thought I thought Keely Ringo would be a 3-year guy in college in high school. I mean, that was just the expectation when you're 6'2" and you run 4.3.
Dude, I'm sitting here looking at this list and I'm seeing at least 5 guys I felt that way about. Ringo, Smith, Washington, Carter, Jones.
Yeah.
I feel like all of those guys were 3 and done.
Yeah, Carter, I don't know that I would have said that.
Nolan's not.
Maybe straight coming out of high school. I mean, I got to listen, I've told this story a million times. I'll tell it again here, though. I remember going down to Apopka, and I interviewed his high school coach. I interviewed Jalen Carter's high school coach. And he didn't tell me who said it, but he said there was a college coach who came through here, and he said that kid right there will be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft when he leaves college. And that story always stuck with me because I've never heard a guy say that. I've never heard a coach tell that story. And sure enough, that turned out to be right.
You should follow up. Use your great reporting skills. Follow up now that he's out of college, probably going to be a top 10 pick. I
would be interested to see who said that. I would like to know who said that.
You know, I do agree with you. I think Warren McClendon, and I was excited when you said Warren Erickson because I was like, okay, great.
Come on, you had to know I was misspeaking.
I was surprised. I was surprised, but excited that my guy was still on the table. I do think Warren McClendon is a big one because you do lose both tackles here. And Georgia did have 3 guys that played tackle at a starter level this season. And if you could have, and Amarius Mims didn't have the option to leave. So if you could have brought one of those 2 back, that would have been huge, and tackle would not be a question at all. You know, it kind of like it wasn't last year. Obviously you were losing Jamari Salyer, but Broderick Jones had played and started some games. So you didn't feel like that was a major concern. I felt like I wrote that a couple times this year about Broderick, is that typically losing your starting left tackle means that that's going to be a huge concern going into the season. It was not, even though that was Broderick's first year as a full-time starter. Next year will be the first time that Amarius Mims is a full-time starter. And I don't think that he's going to be a concern, but losing both tackles, now you're going to have inevitably somebody at one of those tackle positions that is, unless you start Xavier Truss at a tackle, and I guess he's still got a decision to make. He's the only person that, outside of Amarius Mims, that has a start at tackle under his belt left on this team. And so, you know, I think that immediately becomes a major question. Does Ernest Green get healthy in time for spring? You know, and is he able to push for playing time at tackle? If Cedric Van Pran comes back, we saw Austin Blaskey play tackle in the spring game last year. Could he play tackle? You know, Tate Ratledge and Xavier Truss are both guys that came out of high school as tackles, but have spent the majority of their time in college as guards. Does either one of them make the bump outside to tackle? You know, I think that is losing two tackles is huge. And McClendon was the one that I thought had a better chance of coming back.
Palmer, I swear to God, I was about to start a tackle drinking game.
tackle.
just turn the bottle up. No, the reason I would pick Broderick Jones is Broderick Jones would give you the best chance of like having your offensive line back for another season. You know, because losing McClendon, you know, would suck. But then, you know, Amarius Mims did start the last 2 games. And so I think, you know, you would basically, and as much as I think Warren McClendon was just an absolute rock for Georgia, never really stood out. And that's the best thing about him. You know, as much as he was great, I think, you know, you've got 2 supremely high upside tackles there. Maybe the 2 most talented tackle combo that Georgia's seen in a long time. You know, I mean, you know, it seemed, I mean, all the way back since 2019, maybe, to Isaiah Wilson and Andrew Thomas. I mean, you know, that was actually kind of a joke. I was looking at Roos's face while I said that to see if he'd pick up all the way back to 2019.
I was sitting there when you first said it. I was like, it really wasn't that long ago.
Well, I still think those 2 might be more talented. You know, like I think
as a whole, yes, I would agree with that. And
yeah.
To me, I think that people. I think
the right tackle might be more talented than the left tackle in that scenario long term. But
I agree. And I think that it's one of the things I think, listen, Broderick Jones, special makeup, special build, the whole 9 yards, prototypical.
Hey, also, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way too. Found this out during the playoff. A lot of stuff we learned about these guys during the playoff. Cool ass kid. Like
Broderick.
The funniest dude. Very much enjoyed my time with him at Media Day. I mean, a great kid to talk to. One of the best.
I mean, listen, that guy's he's out of Lithonia. I'll tell you this. I think you know this. You've covered kids out of Lithonia. It don't come easy in Lithonia, man.
Oh, no.
I mean, that is a Buford. It ain't. No, I think people are going to miss Warren McClendon a lot more than they think they will.
Oh, sure.
Warren McClendon, to me, was a guy who could have played any of the 5 positions at the University of Georgia on the offensive line. I thought that coming out of high school. To me, he was a do-it-all offensive lineman, a complete Swiss Army knife. You could have plugged and played him anywhere across that line. And I think that's a loss that's really going to be felt. I think everybody anticipated Broderick and says, obviously left tackle, that's the money position. How do you replace that? Warren McClendon, that's going to be one that people definitely are, I think, maybe wringing their hands over next year, a little bit stronger than they might be expecting.
Georgia Show loyalist Matthew C. down here says, Christopher Smith, where's he on this list? He's not on this list because Christopher Smith is out of gas, dude. He has nothing left at the University of Georgia. These are all guys that gave up eligibility to enter the NFL draft. Chris Smith is on the very short list of guys who just are all the way to the end of the rope. I mean, him and Stetson Bennett and Robert Beal, I believe, and that is it.
Almost never happens anymore.
Yeah. I mean, those dudes could not play no matter what. I mean, there's just nothing. Christopher Smith, for some reason, late in the year, thought he had eligibility left.
Yeah,
and we definitely know better than him.
There you go. There's a graphic for Matthew C. Shout out to
there you go, my man. But I totally agree with you from a leadership standpoint and things of that nature. Chris Smith is definitely a big loss. Definitely an emotional leader. And, I remember this is one of the things I think I'm most proud of is I remember seeing Chris Smith in some practices years ago and just kind of the way he was being coached. And it kind of, as a reporter, you kind of have things that lead you to things that lead you to ask things. And sometimes when you ask the right questions, you get more answers out of people than you do. And so I reached out to somebody very close to the staff and, very close to the situation. And I said, hey, what do y'all think about Chris Smith? I kind of noticed this and this and the way he was coaching. Like, man, that kid's a baller. We love the way he plays the game. Just got to get him a little stronger, get him a little bigger, and get him to hold up. And some of those hold up issues were there last year. They were not there this year. Big time prospect, a big time football player, and maybe an NFL prospect too. I think he's going to get dinged a little bit for being undersized, and I wonder how well he's going to run. The Earl Thomases don't grow on trees, and that's kind of the mold he's made out of. And Earl Thomas was I think like a 4.3 guy, 4.2 guy, very fast. And I think Christopher Smith's going to need to be that if he's going to play, if he's going to be a high draft pick in the NFL draft. Hey, out of all those guys, not named Jalen Carter, who do you think gets drafted the highest? Real quick.
Ooh, I think Keeley's just going to – I think Keeley – the people will take him on upside. I think that he'll go – I think he'll measure out perfectly. I think athletically it'll all be there. I think that somebody will make a bet on Keely Ringo and say, look, this is the best piece of clay that we can possibly get our hands on.
I like that. I think Keely Ringo is Richard Sherman with great speed. Like he's Richard Sherman with
if that were the case, wouldn't you take him high too?
Absolutely. 100.
Just to be different, I'll say Broderick Jones. I think he's
that's what I was thinking too. I think Broderick's
he's the only one that I think has a chance outside of – I mean, I saw a mock that had 5 guys going in the first round a couple weeks ago, and that was Jalen, Keely, Broderick, Darnell, Nolan. I don't necessarily – I'll be very curious to see where Nolan and Darnell go.
My dark horse is Darnell. I think that people, again, will fall in love with the measurables. I think that people will just
if he can run really well.
Yeah. People will be. I think Georgia people are going to be stunned by his.
Georgia needs every single thing to go right, but it could have 5 first-round guys again this year. I mean, I don't think it won't, more than likely, but Carter, Broderick, Ringo, Darnell, Nolan.
We got people betting on Kenny.
I can't see him. I can't see him.
I have a hard time seeing it too, but I also think if you get a team there at the end of the first round, they fall in love with him during the process because I think he's going to run really well. I think his arm length stuff's going to be there. I mean, listen, it didn't matter for Trayvon Walker or Leonard Floyd or any of those guys. They didn't put up massive sack seasons. And Nolan was kind of on his way to putting up a career year when he got hurt against Florida. I would, again, I don't think it's going to happen either. I think probably the best they're going to do is 3, but 5 dogs.
I think they could get to 4.
It wouldn't shock me if they
I think the line would be 3.5, heavily favoring 3.
Yeah. I think you're looking at 5 guys inside the top 50, because then you get to throw Chris Smith maybe in the mix there, because I think he's a guy
that would probably get you to 6 in the top 50.
Yeah,
with
could
Nolan,
possibly.
Darnell, and Chris.
There are definitely some guys who could fall out of there. All right, speaking of
I'll
prospects,
be very curious to see where Kenny McIntosh goes. I think
that would be interesting too, because he could sneak in there. He could be a James Cook type. James Cook, I think, got drafted around 60-something or 70-something, though.
Yeah, he was like a 3rd round, number 64 or something like that.
Yeah, 2nd round. I think he's last pick of the 2nd round.
Okay.
Yeah, last pick of the 2nd round. But that'll be interesting. Speaking of prospects, all right, we got a special stock up edition. Let's call them dog stocks, but this is pretty much stock up because we're talking about the On300 release tomorrow. Listen, we can't give you any information because we don't have any information. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Who knows? But we're not going to give you any information. But we are going to kind of preview what we think the On300 is going to look like. Georgia's going to have some risers, and I don't know if you guys are able to handle this. They're going to have some guys who fall, and you're going to have to be able to deal with that. I'm not talking to mainly the people right here. I'm mainly talking to the people who are also here and also on our message board because they're going to raise sand big time. All right, Jake Roos, stock up. Who you got?
Stock up on Monroe Freeling, baby. I'm telling you right now, big time prospect. Georgia out here with a absolute dog according to the performance in those all-star games. Just blew our evaluators away out there, stole the show. I think really what struck people, 6'7", 290, the size is there. No question about that. I think what really struck people was how well he moved and how well he bit. And for an offensive lineman, that's what's so key. And I think that it's number 27 in the nation right now. He doesn't even have a lot of room to grow, really. But I think that he's a guy who presses for 5-star status based on the early returns that we got out of that Adidas All-American game, and going to make Stacy Searles look like maybe a damn genius.
I tell you what, the 5-star thing is a pretty reasonable thing because he had a good camp. He's 27 overall. You're looking at roughly 31, 32 5-stars or whatever. So, I think we're pretty certain he's going to be a 5-star. I think that's probably a safe assumption. But I am interested to see how high he rises because he really did kind of tear it up in that All-Star game there, that Adidas All-American game. Palmer, who you got?
I'm going stock up on Roderick Robinson. RBU, man. I felt like we talked a lot about him in the lead up to signing day as one of the guys that was maybe had the highest potential to rise based on what he did during his senior year. I'm also going stock up on him because he was having fun at the championship parade. Nobody enjoyed that parade more than the early enrollees, I think, and it's funny because they didn't do much to get there other than sign with Georgia, sign their
one on third base and thought they hit a triple.
Yeah. But Roderick, had one heck of a senior season. One of the most outstanding players in the state of California. I would be surprised if he doesn't crack the top 10 of the state of California in terms of On3 consensus. I am really high on where how he finished up that senior season. He had 4 touchdowns in the state championship game. You can't finish a year much better than that. And I want to say he had 3 or 4 in the semifinals as well. So stock up on Roderick Robinson. I think Georgia, I'll be very curious to see how he fits into that running back room next year. Going back to the conversation we were having with Kenny leaving, you've really got to find a pass catching back because I don't think Kendall Milton is that. I don't think Dejan Edwards is that. I don't think Branson Robinson is that. Maybe Andrew Paul is. We didn't really get to see his skill set this year. But if Roderick Robinson can come in and be a proven pass catcher for them, I think, and he's here early, so he's got a chance to get a head start, something that Branson and Andrew did not have going into this last season. I think Roderick Robinson has a chance to be an early contributor. So stock up on the Cali kid.
Listen, hey, you got to note this. I saw this on Twitter from Cal High Sports, one of the guys, one of the groups that covers those guys out there. Roderick Robinson named Mr. Football, the last guy from Lincoln High School to be named Mr. Football, 1977. That was Marcus Allen. Holy cow.
Yeah, he's got a rich tradition of running backs at that high school. Everybody knows about Terrell Davis. You got Marcus Allen, Roderick Robinson. And, you know, if you go and talk to some of the old heads around that building, they'll probably tell you that none of them three were the best running back to ever come through there. It was probably them or their brother. But that's just the way it goes, man. Listen, you spend enough time around these high school. I told Roos years and years ago.
Westlake dads.
Westlake dads, dude. You talk to those Atlanta area dads. Me, Roos and I went to a Westlake Langston Hughes game when DeAndre Walker was there, and you know,
AJ Terrell they turned this on to, wasn't it?
AJ Terrell, Nigel Warrior, all of those guys were out there, and that's what those dads were telling me. They were those, you know, they figure out where you're from, and they're like, hey man, hey, y'all need to check out this kid over here. And AJ Terrell, nobody knew who he was, and he was, I believe, the only guy on the field that day. You know, some of them got drafted. I don't know if Nigel Warrior got drafted, but I do know that DeAndre Walker got drafted. Montravius Atkinson was a college football player at Auburn. Only first-round pick on the field that day was AJ Terrell, and those dads knew exactly what they were talking about because he was a stud. And Georgia probably kind of botched that recruitment a little bit. I think they probably could have had AJ Terrell, but one of the few things Mel Tucker did wrong, he made up for it by getting Eric Stokes. All right, so it's been kind of tough for me to kind of pick one, but I'm going to go all the way back to our buddy Chad Simmons, who is the best at this and being a human that of anybody you know. Chad went back and he saw Gabe Harris. What was it? 6 weeks, 2 months ago, Roos? It was way back.
Yeah. It was like, I want to say it was like late October, maybe something like that.
Yeah, maybe in late October, maybe in November. I mean, hopefully, but it feels like it was a long time ago now. But I know that we had a rankings update right after that.
Yeah.
Like immediately after that. Like he saw him on Saturday. The rankings update was Monday. That means all of that data was in. I'm going to bet on that and say that, you know, Chad saw him. I think Gabe Harris rises because I love that film. And the more we kind of have talked about, the more we've kind of talked about the outside linebacker position at Georgia. I don't know, man. I look at those three guys. We talked about maybe one moving to a 5-tech. You know, Gabe Harris is listed as a defensive end and not an edge rusher like those other guys is. So I assumed it was kind of going to be him. Chad said that he had kind of trended the other way weight-wise. He had kind of slimmed up. I think he's a guy that we could see rise and you know, kind of have, you know, something pretty impressive based on just Chad's comments on how good he looked. And I'll be interested to see where he is tomorrow when the rankings come out. But Gabe Harris has got to keep your eye on going forward for Georgia at that outside linebacker position. Him, Damon Wilson, Samuel Mpemba. You know, we'll see how it all works out. But I think he's a guy that, you know, Valdosta, IMG. I mean, if I'm not mistaken.
Central.
Huh?
He was at Thomas County Central as well.
He was there too?
Yes, he was.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Golly. He made his
he made murderer's row of high schools, man.
Yeah. I mean, did he go to Parkview while he was at it? Just dropped into Buford, had a cup of coffee at Buford. Let's get him over to Jefferson. He can live with me.
No doubt. Jake Rowe just opening his home. If you're a 5-star guy, Jake Rowe has a spot for you. Come be a Jefferson Dragon.
I got an unfinished basement and cots.
Jake was going to say something, and I think I know what he was going to say. Maybe. You never really know what Jake was going to say. But Gabe Harris played more snaps this year than –
I was about to say that.
That's what I thought. That's what you want to finish.
Yeah,
you want to finish my thought then?
Yeah, huh?
You want to finish the thought then?
Yeah, he outsnapped Sam Mpemba this year.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
And the other thing he's got going for him over Mpemba, at least in my opinion, is that he's been a defense-focused guy. Mpemba's been a guy who's split time on both sides of the ball. So he's
played a lot in soccer.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I mean, Gabe Harris, man. Listen. if you go over to this profile on On3 and read what Chad had to say about it. I mean, it was glowing.
Yeah, it
really
was.
And I think another indication is how high everyone in the industry is on him. The fact that consensus is much higher than the On3 ranking. You got a good feeling that those are probably going to level out pretty quickly.
Yeah, they definitely, the gap closes at the very end almost every time. You very rarely see everybody go in a different direction right at the very end. So that gap closes. You know, somebody's had some experience with some composite rankings and stuff. You know, the composite, the consensus, there's all that stuff. But ours is equally weighted. You know, 25% across all 4 networks. That's not the case everywhere else. But all right, so before we kind of play out the string here, I got to bring this up because of Sam Mpemba, soccer kid. At what point do we ever see a college get a kid like Samuel Mpemba on campus, and they're like, oh man, he's just not going to work out on defense, but they're like, dang, he can kick that football, and then you end up with a 6'5", 6'4", 260-pound absolute beast.
We've seen fat kids. We've seen fat kickers. Yeah. Right. I mean, now we've seen that. So, I mean, it's the next logical step.
Can you imagine like a guy like Sam Mpemba wearing like the number 42, right?
Can you imagine him in coverage of his own punts?
Yes. Florida had a kid years ago, and I can't remember his name. Y'all, it was back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. He wore like number 38, and he's a straight-on kicker. He's a straight-on punter, a straight-on kicker. He kicked that thing, and he followed it, dude. He was just, I mean, like it was almost like he kicked it, was running under it the whole way. And he would just lay dudes out. I mean, it was one of the more impressive things I've ever seen. But yeah, I mean, can you just imagine like a 6'5", 250-pound dude just kicking and following his own kick, or kicking and you know, an onside kick?
So I'm assuming we're going to save this for the next show, but Georgia's been on a hell of a recruiting run here lately. Also.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so we can touch on that in our next edition. But
you're talking about the 2 guys that they got here recently.
I'm talking
Jake, about. I got you his name.
What's his name?
Matt, and I'm gonna butcher this last name. He did wear 38.
I'll be able to pronounce the name. I know I will because I'll. Petrowitz.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm notoriously bad with pronunciation.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he used to kick it and just smoke dudes.
Yeah, his Florida bio says, handled kickoff duties for 4 years, a rare conventional straight-on kicker, played with an aggressive style, and had 38 career special teams tackles.
Man, I'm so glad I've got some brain cells connecting and firing and rubbing together up there, and I just nailed that. That makes me feel so good about my college football knowledge. Roos, just tell us real quick about these 2 dudes who committed to Georgia today.
Well, we've got 5 really since the last time we were on the show.
Okay, let's don't. We ain't got time for that.
Okay, well, so we'll talk about the 2025 kids.
Just name them real quick. Name everybody.
Okay, here we go. We'll start it off. Smoke Bowie in the mix from the transfer portal comes in, former Georgia commit, now part of the 2023 class. Follow that up with Peyton Woodyard. Number 2 safety in the class of 2024. Stand out from St. John Bosco, one of the top high school program in America per max preps this year, won the national championship in high school football. Then you followed that up with the number 3 safety in the class,
Javon Bullard's clone,
Jalen Hayward, who I absolutely agree with you, Jake. Jalen Hayward looking like a young Javon Bullard out there. Go check the tape on this guy, just wrecking dudes. And then you add 2 2025 commits on Monday in Micah DeBose, as well as Justice Terry. If Justice Terry's name sounds a little familiar, you might know him from Twitter because he went viral for just being a gigantic, like 13-year-old.
The picture of him standing next to Trayvon Walker. Trayvon had just been picked as the number 1 player in the draft, or was just about to be picked, and Justice is just as big as him as a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I mean the DeBose kid too is like 6'5", 300, 310. So I mean you pick up 2 massive kids. Georgia up to what 4 I think it is now in the 2025 class. You've got the number 2 and number 3 safety for 2024 already committed, and a very legitimate shot at this point at the number 1 safety in the class in KJ Bolden. So that's
Who may or may not play safety, right?
Yeah, no question. And same thing with Mike Matthews, right? Like maybe he plays wide receiver, maybe he plays defensive back. We don't know. Who cares? Let them play center if they want to. Tell them what you got to get them on campus. But either way, Georgia with a really stellar recruiting run going off of this national championship. Things just continuing to look up for him on that front for sure. And Aiden Cruz over here with a quick question I wanted to hit on. He said he asked about Walker Howard, the LSU transfer. I haven't heard any smoke there.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything there either. I also see there was some talk up here about Cedric Van Pran and Ladd. The deadline is today. I don't know with all the events at Georgia that they may have been able to get like a little bit of a reprieve for that. Maybe they'll give them until Friday because there's a 72-hour reconsideration window for those guys. I'm not sure there. At no point did I expect any announcement from them today. That's the farthest thing from those guys' minds right now, I'm sure. But based on intel, I would, I've said it already. I think Ladd would probably stay. If today is based on everything that I've heard, and I've been hearing for several days now that Cedric Van Pran is just 50-50, and that's a lot better than it was on Tuesday.
What a big God almighty, what a big if he comes back, that changes the face of the offensive line next year, because talk about a key point for center.
One, and Matthew C mentioned losing leadership. I mean, you've got a guy that was a captain as a junior. That would be huge to get him back.
Yeah,
not many junior captains.
Well, he's a redshirt sophomore, but third year guy.
Yeah,
right?
third year guy.
Yeah, not very many guys get to come back and be a captain as a junior. It's so weird. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, which is just outrageous. All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight's show. We'll be back on Wednesday. We're going to have plenty to talk about. We're going to talk about those rankings that we previewed and see if we're right, revisit all that stuff, and we'll have a welcome sight on next show. Wesley Blankenship will be with us. So we will
go see Breaking Tees also. Go check out Breaking Tees.
Go check out Breaking Tees. Those people have good stuff. Real good stuff. And
as Wes would say, you need a Georgia t-shirt. Don't lie to yourself. They've got great national championship merch.
I think Palmer doing a half-hearted Wes impression is the best. You need a Georgia t-shirt. Don't lie to yourself. Bye. All right, guys, we're goofing off.
It's 9:30. It's past Jake bedtime.
Let's get out of here. We'll get Wes back, get this thing back on the rails, get our lives back together. We'll see y'all later on.